In this video, you'll discover 5 shots every pool player must know and how to play them properly. We have to start with this 4 ball, where we need to get to the A ball. This tribal blocks access to this corner pocket, so we are actually forced to bring the cue ball into this area. Let's play a center ball first with natural speed and see what happens. And well, the cue ball follows a very nice path, but there wasn't enough speed to get a good shape on the 8 ball. And what is very interesting, at this point many players think that to extend this path, we just have to use more speed, but surprisingly, the cue ball behaves completely differently and hits side rail right before corner pockets. So the question is, why is this happening? When we used low speed, the cue ball had enough time to start spinning with natural rotation before contacting the object ball. But when we used more speed, the cue ball contacts object ball with no spin, so it followed a very similar path to the tangent line. Okay, so to fix this problem we have to use short rail first, and we can achieve it by applying topspin to the cue ball. And yes, this path looks much better because cue ball touches 2 rails and goes towards the opposite short rail, creating a perfect shape on the 8 ball. However, in my opinion, it would be much better if we added a bit of left spin, because then the cue ball touches another rail, which might increase speed control of that attempt. Alright, but now let's add some difficulty by blocking access to the short rail. This time we are forced to use side rail first, and we can do this by hitting the cue ball very low. And well, as you can see, this is definitely not the effect we expected, because the cue ball lands very low. So in this case, it would be nice if we added some left spin to open more angle on the side rail. This is exactly what we wanted. Left spin gives additional grip on the rail, so we are able to create a perfect shape on the 8 ball. There also might be a situation where we don't have access to the opposite pocket. If we go back a few shots, we remember perfectly well that to contact the short rail first, we had to use topspin, but this time we need to get to the opposite side. What is a very natural thing to do here is apply right spin to straighten the path after contact with the rail. But unfortunately, what is very interesting, cue ball is not able to reach the position area because the right spin took away a lot of momentum, and that's why it went so short. Okay, but how about we add a lot of left spin this time? We have to hit short rail very close to corner pocket, but despite this, we are not able to avoid hitting the A ball, and in most cases we'll simply lose position to this ball. And well, all this comes down to a very important conclusion, that this time to reach the position area we have to use side rail first. When I played a center ball with more speed, we remembered that the cue ball went toward the corner pocket, so this time we should hit just a tiny bit lower and add a lot of right spin. This speed plays a huge role because the cue ball gains additional speed on the rails and goes toward the intended area contacting 4 rails. This one is going to be a very common shot we experience over and over again. Same as before, we need to get from the 4 ball to the 8 ball, and once again the strike ball blocks access to 1 corner pocket. We start by just playing a center ball with natural speed to see what happens. And unfortunately, once again the cue ball doesn't have enough speed to reach the position area, so let's try to increase the amount of speed. And wow, the result is even worse because the cue ball went so differently and we weren't able to leave the top area of the table. So let's check what happens if we play a follow shot. And yes, this is exactly what we wanted. The cue ball touches the short rail first and goes immediately toward the intended area. Alright, but what should we do if there are some balls that completely block access to the short rail? This time, to get shape on the A ball, we have to go around the table contacting the side rail first, and we can achieve it by hitting the cue ball slightly below its center with a lot of right spin. This is an extremely difficult shot to control because despite applying a lot of speed, the cue ball lands quite short with a bit of angle to the A ball. Okay, but what will happen if we block access to the opposite side pocket? We need to go back again to remember how the cue ball behaved when we used topspin. We were able to hit the short rail first and go almost parallel to the side rail, but this time we need to get to the other side of the table. And well, this time we have to slightly decrease the amount of topspin and add some left spin. The cue ball hits the short rail first right before the corner pocket and uses another rail to land on the right side of the table. But once again, we need to add some difficulty by blocking access to this part of the short rail. This time we are forced to hit side rail much earlier, and we can achieve it by hitting the cue ball very high, but because we need to go toward right side of the table, we should add some right spin. This is also very predictable and repeatable option, so I believe you shouldn't have problems to reach position area. And finally, last scenario, we have completely blocked access to the short rail, so we are actually forced to use side rail first. However, we experience quite uncomfortable angle, and if we hit the cue ball very low, then it lands very high without good position to the 8 ball. So in this case, it would be much better if we added some left spin, because this spin opens more angle on side rail, which makes it possible to send the cue ball to the bottom area. Crucial will be landing enough low to avoid leaving too much angle on the 8 ball. I'm pretty sure that all of you experience this shot very often. We have the wrong angle on the 4 ball and we need to get to the 8 ball. However, strike ball blocks access to this corner pocket. If I try to play a center ball with natural speed, then cue ball is going almost perfectly toward corner pocket and we completely lose this positioning. We definitely need to change something, and let's try to increase amount of speed. And well, this path looks absolutely perfect because once again cue ball follows tangent line, but this time we are able to go up and down parallel to the side rail and land with perfect shape on the 8 ball. Okay, but what would you do if I blocked this path? To avoid colliding with these balls, we can try to apply topspin. However, as you can see, this path looks not good, because cue ball goes toward wrong side of the table. But what is very interesting, we can still use the same shot with topspin, but this time add some left spin. And this looks absolutely perfect because left spin opens more angle on top rail, so we are able to hit side rail at a comfortable distance before side pocket and land with perfect shape on the 8 ball. Alright, but this video is for creating and solving problems, so let's block access to this part of the top rail. This time we cannot use side rail first, so let's check what will happen if I hit the cue ball slightly below its center. Okay, it doesn't look good because we scratch inside pockets. So this time it seems that we should hit the cue ball lower, but surprisingly we scratch again, but this time in corner pockets. So a good solution would be to hit the rail at a comfortable distance from the corner pocket, so we can actually use a bit of low again, but this time add some left spin. Absolutely perfect. This is our solution to this problem. Cue ball lands quite high, but it is still very good position to the 8 ball. But sometimes, of course, that path can be also blocked, which puts us in a very difficult position. If we look closer, we have access to the small part of the top rail right before corner pocket. If we hit 4 ball slightly fuller and apply topspin with a lot of ride, then cue ball is able to avoid contacting all blockers and goes practically parallel to side rail, creating perfect shape on the 8 ball. In our next situation, we face another common scenario where players don't really know how to behave. We need to get to the 8 ball, which is blocked to this corner pocket by stripe ball. Okay, so let's see what happens when we play a center ball. Oh no, that was completely wrong decision. Cue ball follows its natural path, and even increasing amount of speed is not enough because the cue ball lands very low without position to the 8 ball. Alright, so how about hitting the cue ball slightly below its center? This actually seems to be a pretty good option, but look how close we are to side pockets. So to get higher on the table, we should increase the amount of backspin, but surprisingly cue ball is going towards side pocket, so there is also high risk of scratch. Alright, so maybe something will change if we use touch of right spin. And this is actually very interesting, because cue ball follows a very similar path to the shot with only a bit of low. And all this comes down to a very important conclusion, that we should use a combination of low and right spin. Just a touch of this kind of spin is enough to guide the cue ball much higher and get pretty good shape on the 8 ball. But of course, sometimes this path is also blocked by opponent's balls, so we have to change something. This time we need to use the short rail, and what is a very natural idea, follow on the cue ball should solve the problem. And whoa, surprisingly cue ball is going so wrong, because it is not even able to touch short rail. If topspin alone is not enough, it means we should add some left spin, and let's see what will happen. Yes, this is it. Cue ball hits short rail very close to corner pocket and follows a very nice path, far away from the blockers. Okay, but once again let's add some difficulty by blocking this path as well. The only thing we have to do is decreasing amount of topspin and hitting the cue ball just with left rotation. This type of spin causes the cue ball to hit short rail much earlier, so we are able to avoid colliding with blockers. Final position of the cue ball looks a bit different than the previous one, but it is still great shape on the 8 ball and the only way to make this positioning. And finally, I left something absolutely special for the very end, a shot that every player simply must know. Same like before, we need to get from 4 ball to the 8 ball, which we have to play into this corner pocket. So let's go for the center ball and natural speed first. And well, this path looks not bad, but once again there was not enough speed, so I'm sure hitting the cue ball harder should solve the problem. Ooh, actually this is not what I expected. A-ball is still possible to play, but we are way too high. Alright, so how about we hit with bit of right spin, which should send the cue ball lower. And whoa, that was way too low and we were not even able to land on the right side of the table. So let's check what will happen if I hit the cue ball just slightly above its center. And yes, this is our best solution to this situation, but sometimes there might be a ball which blocks this path. This time, if we use same spin, the cue ball automatically hits blocker and we are not able to go toward bottom rail. But don't worry, first of all we can just roll the cue ball with center ball and stop it in exactly the same place as the blocker. Once again we are leaving a bit more angle on the 8 ball, so in this case you can consider second option, where this time I'm gonna use a bit of right spin and use a blocker to send the cue ball down the table. And sometimes there will be another problem, because another balls block access to the 8 ball. We have to hit the cue ball very low and add a lot of right spin. However, the key is executing a drag shot, so cue ball slows down and right spin gives additional rail grip, sending the cue ball further down the table, which makes it possible to avoid blockers and land with perfect shape on the 8 ball.